My shift started just like any other on the night of March 29th, 2023. The school was eerily quiet, every sound amplified by the emptiness of the halls. The glow from the security cameras cast long shadows, making the familiar corridors seem alien. I did my usual rounds, ensuring all doors were locked and no one was lingering after hours. The silence was both comforting and unsettling. As I walked past the main entrance, a faint, unusual noise caught my attention. It sounded like a soft whisper, but it was gone before I could pinpoint its source. I paused, listening intently, but all I heard was the distant hum of the school's ventilation system. Shaking off the unease, I continued my patrol, checking each room meticulously. The classrooms were all in order, nothing out of place. Reaching the end of the hallway, I noticed the door to room 214 was slightly ajar. That was odd. I was sure I had checked it earlier. Pushing the door open, I was met with nothing but darkness. The room was empty, just like all the others. Still, a chill ran down my spine. Something felt off, though I couldn't put my finger on it. I closed the door and made a mental note to review the camera footage later. Back in the security office, I sat down to monitor the cameras. The feeds showed the same empty hallways and silent classrooms. Just as I was about to dismiss my earlier concerns, a flicker on the screen caught my eye. In the corridor outside room 214, a shadow moved briefly before disappearing. My heart skipped a beat. Had someone broken in, or was my mind playing tricks on me? Determined to get to the bottom of this, I grabbed my flashlight and headed back to room 214. The corridor was as empty as before, but the sense of being watched was palpable. I checked the room again, finding nothing unusual. As I turned to leave, I heard it again. The faint whisper, closer this time. My pulse quickened as I scanned the darkness, but once again, there was no one there. I couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone was in the school with me. Returning to the security office, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The faint whisper lingered in my mind, making it hard to concentrate. As I reviewed the camera footage from earlier, my heart raced. There it was again, a shadowy figure moving swiftly past room 214. I rewound the footage and watched it frame by frame, but the image was too grainy to make out any details. The next day, I casually mentioned the incident to a few teachers. To my surprise, they exchanged uneasy glances. One of them, Mr. Thompson, pulled me aside and whispered, "You're not the first to notice strange things at night. Some of us have heard stories, but we try not to talk about it." His words sent a chill down my spine. I decided to investigate further that night. As darkness fell, I made my rounds with heightened vigilance. Every creak and groan of the building seemed magnified. Approaching room 214, I noticed the door was slightly open again. This time, I entered cautiously, my flashlight sweeping the room. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the adjacent corridor. I sprinted out, my heart pounding, but the hallway was empty. Only a fallen mop and bucket lay on the floor, as if dropped hastily. I decided to revisit the security footage, hoping to find more clues. To my shock, the cameras had recorded nothing out of the ordinary during the incident. Frustration mingled with fear as I tried to make sense of it. Just then, I remembered Mr. Thompson's words and decided to talk to more staff members. Maybe someone knew something that could help. The following evening, I caught up with Ms. Harper, one of the senior teachers. She reluctantly shared that some students had reported strange occurrences late at night, unexplained noises, flickering lights, and even shadows moving when no one was there. She advised me to be cautious and not to confront anything directly. Her warning only deepened my resolve to uncover the truth. Determined, I resumed my patrols with a new plan. I would stay hidden and watch room 214 from a distance, hoping to catch whatever was causing the disturbances. As I settled into my hiding spot, the minutes stretched into hours. Just when I was about to give up, I saw it, a figure darting into room 214. My pulse quickened as I approached the room, flashlight in hand, ready to confront whatever or whoever was inside. I cautiously entered room 214, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The room appeared empty at first glance, but I sensed a presence. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice echoing off the walls. For a moment, there was silence. Then, from behind a row of desks, a small figure emerged. A student, trembling and clearly terrified. "Please don't hurt me," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Relief washed over me as I realized he was just a frightened kid. "I'm not going to hurt you," I assured him, lowering my flashlight. "What are you doing here?" The student, still shaking, explained that he had been exploring the school with friends when they dared him to stay overnight. They had locked him in as a prank, and he had been too scared to find a way out. I could see the fear in his eyes, and it reminded me of my own feelings of unease. "Come on," I said gently. "Let's get you out of here." As we walked towards the exit, he told me about the strange noises and shadows he had seen, confirming my suspicions. My heart ached for him, knowing how terrified he must have been. Back in the security office, I called his parents to let them know he was safe. They were relieved and thanked me profusely. After they picked him up, I sat back, reflecting on the night's events. The whispers, the shadows, they all made sense now. But the real mystery was why the disturbances had continued even after the student was found. Determined to get to the bottom of it, I reviewed the footage one last time. As I watched, I noticed something I had missed before. A small, unmarked door at the back of room 214 that seemed to lead to a hidden area. My curiosity piqued. I knew I had to investigate further. The next night, I would uncover what lay beyond that door, and hopefully put an end to the eerie happenings. I prepared for my next shift with a sense of purpose. Armed with the knowledge of the hidden door and the student's experience, I felt more confident. This time, I wouldn't be caught off guard. As I headed back to room 214, the night felt different, less foreboding, more like a puzzle waiting to be solved. I was ready to face whatever secrets the school held. As I began my next shift, my focus was singular: uncover the secrets behind the unmarked door in room 214. The school was as silent as ever, but my determination drowned out any feelings of fear. I approached the room cautiously, flashlight in hand, and pushed open the door. The air inside felt colder, the atmosphere more charged. I walked to the back of the room, my steps echoing in the silence. The unmarked door was barely noticeable, blending seamlessly with the wall. I tried the handle, but it was locked. Undeterred, I used my security keys, hoping one would fit. After a few tries, I heard a satisfying click. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. My flashlight illuminated the steps as I descended cautiously. The air grew colder and damper, the faint smell of mildew filling my nostrils. At the bottom, I found myself in a small, dimly lit basement. The walls were lined with old filing cabinets and dusty shelves filled with forgotten school supplies. In the center of the room, there was an old wooden desk covered in papers. I approached the desk, curiosity driving me forward. The papers appeared to be old school records and blueprints. As I sifted through them, one document caught my eye: a detailed plan of a secret project that had been abandoned years ago. The project aimed to create a safe room for students during emergencies, but had been halted due to budget cuts. The room had been forgotten, left to gather dust. The more I read, the clearer the picture became. The disturbances were likely caused by the structural changes made during the project. The hidden room had an old ventilation system that sometimes emitted strange noises, and the flickering lights were due to faulty wiring. There was no ghost or sinister presence, just the remnants of an abandoned project. I felt a mix of relief and satisfaction as I pieced together the mystery. Armed with this information, I knew I could put an end to the rumors and fears that had plagued the school. I carefully replaced the documents and made my way back upstairs. The school, once shrouded in mystery and fear, now seemed less daunting. Back in the security office, I documented my findings and shared them with the school administration. They were surprised, but grateful for the resolution. With their approval, I began working on fixing the ventilation and lighting issues, ensuring no more students would be frightened by the school's hidden past. The school felt safer, and I felt a sense of accomplishment. With the mystery of room 214 resolved, the atmosphere at the school began to change. The teachers, who had once exchanged uneasy glances, now smiled more often. Students felt safer, and rumors about ghosts and strange occurrences gradually faded. My relationship with the students and staff improved as they saw me not just as a security guard, but as someone who cared about their well-being. Over the next few weeks, I worked with the administration to implement new security measures. We installed additional cameras and improved the lighting in dimly lit areas. I also conducted a few safety workshops, teaching students and staff how to respond in case of emergencies. The sense of community grew stronger, and the school became a place of trust and cooperation. One evening, as I was finishing my rounds, I noticed the student I had found in room 214, waiting by the entrance. He approached me with a shy smile. "Thank you for helping me that night," he said. "I was really scared, but you made me feel safe." His words warmed my heart, reinforcing my commitment to my job. We chatted for a while, and I learned more about his interests and dreams. It felt good to connect on a personal level. The school administration decided to officially recognize my efforts. In a small ceremony, they presented me with an award for outstanding service and dedication. The gesture meant a lot to me, but what mattered most was the difference I had made in the lives of the students and staff. The once eerie hallways now felt like home, filled with laughter and learning. Reflecting on the events of the past month, I realized how much I had grown. The fear and uncertainty of those initial nights had given way to confidence and purpose. I had faced the unknown and emerged stronger, not just as a security guard, but as a member of the school community. The experience taught me the value of persistence and the importance of facing one's fears. As I continued my duties, I remained vigilant, always ready to protect and serve. The school, now a safer and more welcoming place, thrived. The whispers and shadows were gone, replaced by the vibrant energy of students eager to learn and grow. And though the mystery of room 214 was solved, the lessons I learned stayed with me, guiding me in my role as a guardian of the school's safety and spirit. November 16th, 2022 was a cold, crisp night as I began my shift. The school, shrouded in darkness, stood silent and imposing. As I made my rounds, the familiar creaks and groans of the old building seemed louder, more ominous. My flashlight beam cut through the shadows, revealing empty classrooms and deserted hallways. The quiet was almost suffocating, a stark contrast to the daytime hustle and bustle. Midway through my patrol, I heard a loud, echoing noise that seemed to come from the far end of the building. My heart pounded as I hurried toward the source, my mind racing with possibilities. Rounding the corner, I found nothing but a fallen chair in an empty hallway. The incident was unsettling, but I dismissed it as a fluke, perhaps the result of an unbalanced chair left too close to the edge. Continuing my patrol, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every sound seemed amplified. The hum of the fluorescent lights, the rustle of leaves against the windows, the distant clanging of pipes. My senses were on high alert, every shadow a potential threat. I checked each classroom meticulously, but everything appeared in order. Yet the feeling of unease persisted, gnawing at the edges of my thoughts. Back in the security office, I reviewed the camera footage, hoping to find an explanation for the noise. As I scanned the screens, my eyes caught a fleeting shadow near room 309. It moved swiftly, disappearing before I could make out any details. My pulse quickened as I rewound the footage and watched it again. There it was, a dark, indistinct shape slipping into the room. I decided to investigate. Approaching room 309, I felt a chill run down my spine. The door was ajar, just like the night in room 214. Pushing it open, I stepped inside, my flashlight casting eerie shadows on the walls. The room was empty, but the air felt thick with tension. As I turned to leave, a soft, almost inaudible whisper reached my ears. I spun around, but there was no one there. The feeling of being watched intensified, and I quickly exited the room, locking it behind me. The next night, the school seemed even more foreboding. The chill in the air felt sharper, and the shadows seemed darker. I couldn't forget the whisper from room 309. Determined to find answers, I approached a few colleagues who had worked the night shift before. Their reactions were varied. Some shrugged it off, while others seemed genuinely concerned, sharing their own unsettling experiences. One of the custodians, Mr. Jensen, spoke in hushed tones. "I've heard things too," he admitted. "Whispers, footsteps, even seen shadows moving where they shouldn't be. It's why I avoid that part of the building at night." His words echoed my own fears, and I decided to keep a closer watch on room 309. Something about that room didn't sit right with me, and I was determined to uncover the truth. As I resumed my patrol, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The halls were deathly silent, every creak and rustle amplified in the stillness. When I reached room 309, the door was slightly open again. Taking a deep breath, I stepped inside, my flashlight illuminating the dark corners. The room seemed empty, but the sense of unease was palpable. Then I noticed something new. A small, dusty notebook lying on a desk. Curious, I picked it up and flipped through the pages. It was filled with drawings and scribbles, the work of a student. But the drawings grew increasingly disturbing. Dark figures lurking in the hallways, ominous eyes watching from the shadows. My heart raced as I realized the student had been documenting their own fears and experiences in the school. The notebook's last entry was dated November 15th, 2022, the day before I found it. It described hearing whispers and seeing shadows near room 309. As I stood there, absorbed in the notebook, I heard the whisper again. This time, it was clearer, closer. I turned around, my flashlight scanning the room, but saw nothing. The whisper continued, a soft, eerie murmur that sent chills down my spine. Fear gripped me, but I forced myself to stay calm. I had to get to the bottom of this. Clutching the notebook, I left room 309 and headed back to the security office to review the footage once more. The footage revealed nothing unusual, just the same fleeting shadow near room 309. Frustration and fear mingled as I pondered my next move. I couldn't ignore the whispers and shadows any longer. The school felt like a living entity, its secrets hidden in the darkness. Determined to find answers, I decided to stay hidden near room 309 the following night, hoping to catch whatever or whoever was causing these disturbances. The next night, I stationed myself near room 309, hidden in the shadows. The school was eerily silent, the only sound my own breathing. My heart pounded in my chest as I waited, flashlight in hand, ready to confront whatever might appear. The minutes stretched into hours, each one filled with a tension that seemed to thicken the air around me. Around 3 a.m., I saw it, a shadow moving silently towards room 309. My pulse quickened as I watched the figure slip inside. Summoning my courage, I followed, moving as quietly as possible. The door creaked open under my touch, and I stepped into the darkness. The figure stood at the far end of the room, facing away from me. It was a student, their silhouette barely visible in the dim light. "Hey," I called out softly, not wanting to startle them. The student turned slowly, their face pale and eyes wide with fear. "I didn't mean to scare you," I said, stepping closer. "What are you doing here?" The student, trembling, pointed towards the corner of the room, where a faint glow emanated from a small old radio. The student explained in a hushed voice that they had been hearing strange broadcasts at night, filled with eerie whispers and unsettling messages. Drawn by curiosity and fear, they had come to room 309 to investigate, hoping to find the source of the broadcasts. The radio, dusty and seemingly ancient, crackled to life, emitting a series of whispers that sent chills down my spine. I carefully approached the radio, the student's fear mirrored in my own heart. As I examined it, the whispers grew louder, forming coherent words that spoke of secrets and warnings. The student's fear turned to panic, and they backed away, urging me to leave it alone. But I couldn't. This radio was the key to understanding the disturbances plaguing the school. As I turned the dial, the whispers abruptly stopped, replaced by a low, humming static. The room fell silent, the air heavy with anticipation. Suddenly, the radio emitted a piercing scream that shattered the quiet, sending the student and me into a panic. I quickly turned the radio off, the scream cutting off as abruptly as it had begun. The silence that followed was deafening, the fear tangible. We left room 309 together, the student clinging to my arm. Back in the security office, I tried to process what had happened. The radio, the whispers, the scream. It all pointed to something far more sinister than I had imagined. Determined to protect the students and uncover the truth, I knew I had to delve deeper into the school's dark history and find a way to put an end to the terrifying broadcasts. Determined to get to the bottom of the eerie happenings at the school, I spent the next day researching its history, The students' terror and the radio's chilling broadcasts were burned into my mind, driving me to find answers. I combed through old records and archives, hoping to uncover any clues about Room 309 and the strange occurrences linked to it. As I dug deeper, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. The school had been built over 50 years ago, and over the decades, there had been numerous reports of strange activities, all centered around Room 309. Previous security guards, custodians, and even some teachers had documented their experiences with whispers, shadows, and unexplained noises. The most disturbing report came from a former teacher who claimed to have seen ghostly apparitions and heard disembodied voices late at night. Many of these accounts were dismissed as mere figments of overactive imaginations, but they painted a clear picture. Something was not right about that room. My curiosity led me to the town's library, where I hoped to find more detailed historical records. The librarian, an elderly woman with a kind smile, was surprisingly knowledgeable about the school's history. She helped me find old newspaper clippings and historical documents that revealed more about the land on which the school was built. It turned out that long before the school existed, the land had been the site of a small, now defunct radio station known for its controversial and unsettling broadcasts. The radio station, WQZT, had a dark history. In the early 1960s, it had been the center of a local scandal involving its mysterious and macabre late-night programming. People in the community reported hearing bizarre and frightening messages, and there were rumors that the station's broadcasts were linked to several unexplained disappearances. The station was eventually shut down, and the building was demolished. The land remained vacant until the school was built on it years later. Armed with this new information, I felt a mix of dread and determination. The radio in Room 309 must have somehow been connected to the old WQZT station. It explained the strange broadcasts and whispers, but it raised more questions than it answered. How had the radio ended up in Room 309? And why were the broadcasts starting again now? That night, I prepared for my shift with a renewed sense of purpose. I decided to investigate Room 309 one more time, this time bringing along the student who had initially discovered the radio. They were hesitant, but agreed to join me, driven by their own need for answers. We arrived at the school just before midnight, the air heavy with anticipation. As we approached Room 309, the student clutched my arm tightly. The door was slightly ajar, just as it had been on previous nights. We entered cautiously, the beam of my flashlight illuminating the room. The radio sat ominously in the corner, silent for now, but no less menacing. I took a deep breath and turned it on, bracing myself for whatever might come through the speakers. The radio crackled to life, the static filling the room with an oppressive weight. For a moment, there was nothing but the low hum of interference. Then, the whispers began. They were clearer this time, more distinct. The voices spoke in hushed tones, their words laced with fear and urgency. "They know," one voice said. "They mustn't find out," said another. The student and I exchanged a glance, our fear mirrored in each other's eyes. As the whispers continued, the student pointed to a corner of the room where a faint glow was emanating. We approached it cautiously and discovered a hidden panel in the wall. Behind it was a small, dusty compartment containing an old reel-to-reel tape recorder. The machine was still running, the tape slowly winding through its spools. I turned off the radio and carefully removed the tape from the recorder. The student and I listened to the tape on a more modern player in the security office. The recordings were chilling. Distorted voices speaking of secrets, betrayals, and warnings. The messages seemed to be directed at someone specific, though it was unclear who. The student recognized one of the voices as that of a former teacher who had mysteriously disappeared years ago. The realization sent a shiver down my spine. The broadcasts were not just random. They were messages from the past, meant to be heard by those in the present. We decided to share our findings with the school administration. They were initially skeptical, but agreed to listen to the tape. As the eerie voices filled the room, the expressions on their faces changed from doubt to fear. They agreed to help us investigate further, determined to uncover the truth behind the mysterious broadcasts and the dark history of the school. The next few days were a blur of research and discussions. We contacted former employees of the radio station, historians, and even paranormal experts. The pieces of the puzzle slowly came together, revealing a story of corruption, hidden agendas, and a desperate attempt to cover up the truth. The broadcasts were a warning, a cry for help from those who had suffered and been silenced. As we delved deeper, the atmosphere at the school grew tenser. The students and staff became aware of the investigation, their curiosity mingling with fear. The whispers and shadows seemed to intensify, as if the very walls of the school were trying to communicate with us. The truth was closer than ever, but it came with a heavy price. The following night, the school was shrouded in an even deeper sense of foreboding. Determined to bring closure to the unsettling events, I met with the student and a small group of staff members who had agreed to join us. We gathered in the security office, reviewing the recordings and discussing our plan. The atmosphere was thick with tension, each of us feeling the weight of the unknown. As midnight approached, we made our way to room 309. The hallway was eerily quiet, the only sound the soft echo of our footsteps. The door to room 309 stood ajar, as if inviting us in. Taking a deep breath, I led the way inside, flashlight in hand. The room felt colder than before, the air heavy with anticipation. The radio sat silently in the corner, a sinister presence even in its stillness. We huddled around the radio, and I turned it on. The static crackled, followed by the now familiar whispers. The voices were clearer than ever, speaking in a hurried, almost frantic tone. "They must know," one voice said. "The truth must come out," another added. The student and I exchanged a tense glance, our determination stronger than our fear. We had to uncover the truth behind these messages. As the whispers continued, I noticed something strange about the room. The walls seemed to shimmer, as if hiding something beneath their surface. I approached the wall where the hidden panel had been found, my fingers tracing the faint outline of a door. With the help of the others, we pried the panel open, revealing a narrow passage leading into darkness. The air inside was musty, filled with the scent of decay and forgotten secrets. We ventured into the passage, our flashlights cutting through the gloom. The walls were lined with old photographs, newspaper clippings, and handwritten notes. The images depicted the history of the school, the faces of students and teachers long gone. As we moved deeper, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. It felt as if the very walls were speaking to us, urging us to uncover their secrets. At the end of the passage, we found a small room filled with old recording equipment. The machines were covered in dust, their dials and buttons worn from years of use. In the center of the room, a large reel-to-reel tape recorder stood, its tape slowly winding through the spools. The student and I exchanged a look of disbelief. This was the source of the broadcasts, hidden away for decades. We gathered around the recorder and I pressed play. The tape crackled to life, and the voices from the radio filled the room. The messages were more detailed, speaking of a conspiracy to cover up a series of tragic events that had occurred at the school. The voices belonged to former teachers and students who had tried to expose the truth but had been silenced. Their stories were heartbreaking, filled with fear and desperation. One voice stood out, a teacher who had vanished mysteriously years ago. She spoke of strange experiments conducted in the school's basement, where students were subjected to mind-altering broadcasts. The purpose of these experiments was unclear, but the effects were devastating. Many students suffered from severe psychological trauma, and some even disappeared without a trace. The school's administration had gone to great lengths to bury the truth, erasing all evidence of the experiments. As the tape continued, the atmosphere in the room grew heavier. The student beside me was visibly shaken, tears streaming down their face. "We have to stop this," they whispered, their voice trembling. I nodded in agreement, determined to bring the truth to light and put an end to the suffering that had haunted the school for so long. We collected the tapes and documents, bringing them back to the security office. The administration, now fully aware of the gravity of the situation, pledged to investigate further and take action. The news spread quickly, and soon the entire school was buzzing with talk of the uncovered secrets. Students and staff were both horrified and relieved, grateful that the truth was finally coming to light. Over the next few days, the school underwent a transformation. The administration worked tirelessly to address the issues, bringing in experts to decommission the old equipment and secure the hidden passage. Counselors were brought in to support the students and staff, helping them process the traumatic revelations. The school community rallied together, determined to heal and move forward. The student who had first discovered the radio became a symbol of resilience and courage. Their bravery in facing the unknown had sparked a change, inspiring others to stand up for the truth. The school, once a place of shadows and whispers, began to feel like a beacon of hope and renewal. The past would not be forgotten, but it would no longer hold them captive. Reflecting on the journey, I felt a profound sense of closure. The mystery of Room 309 had been solved, and the ghosts of the past were finally at rest. The school was no longer a place of fear, but one of learning and growth. As I continued my duties, I carried with me the lessons learned and the determination to keep the school safe for future generations.